Hi friends, it's Mrs. Carrillo and I'm coming to you from my kitchen and I wanted to share with you a fun recipe for salt dough to make beads with a very young child. So these beads can later be used, my dog has an opinion apparently, these beads can later be used for bead stringing, you can paint them. So I will show you how to make the beads and also a couple of other things. But first let's get to the salt dough. So salt dough is very easy to make. You're going to use equal parts salt and flour and then a little bit of warm water. So what I did was I used just a half a cup of salt, a half a cup of flour, and I mixed those together in a bowl, and to that I added just about between a quarter and a third cup of warm water. It kind of depends on the consistency, and when I finished I got a larger ball than this, but this is sort of the consistency of the dough. It's a little bit gritty, but it's still soft and pliable. So let me show you first of all how you would make a bead, and this is something that children love. So after you've mixed your half a cup of salt, half a cup of flour, quarter cup of warm water, you're gonna get a little piece and you're gonna roll it in your hands, roll it, roll it, roll it, roll it. And then this is the part that I love. If you have a chopstick, this is really fun. You're going to push the chopstick all the way through. You can also do this down on the counter if you want. I'm just holding it up so you can see. And you make a bead. So you can make beads of various sizes. So here are some of the other beads that I've made. And it's just as simple as that. So once again, you'd break off a piece of dough, the size that you want. You'd roll, 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 roll it in your hands. And then you're going to take your chopstick, poke a hole to get it all the way through to make your bead. You can see a couple of other things I've made here too. So I've got my beads over here lined up that I've made. Some other things that you can make with salt dough would also be you can make cookie cutter shapes like this star here that I have made. And if you're a little more adventurous, you could make some nature prints. So I have made a print of a leaf here. So I've just flattened out dough and pressed a leaf into it, which would dry and paint later. Here I've made a flat shape of a flower with fingerprints going around that is going to dry and I can paint later. And then for the slightly older child, you can actually make the continent shapes. So I've made the continent of Africa. And if you're familiar with all the continents, you could make the continents and paint them as well. But for the very young child, creating these beads is a really fun project. And when the beads are, when you're done making however many beads you want, you can let them air dry. However, air drying takes a really long time, like as long as a week, depending on how thick the beads are. So for the beads, I would recommend baking them in the oven at 200 degrees, probably for like 10 minutes. You might want to flip them after 5, see if they're done. You can kind of check in and see when they're firm. And then children would have a wonderful time painting them and then using some yarn to string them and make their own jewelry. And again, that project, you know, a 2-year-old can do with some supervision. Older children will love making jewelry for the whole family. And with salt dough, you can really create anything you want. You could use the salt dough to make letters. You could use the salt dough to make numbers. You could use, like I used my cookie cutter shapes to make a star. If you wanted to make a star pendant, you could poke a hole in the top of the star and let it dry and then paint it and hang it on a string and you'd have a very fancy necklace. You could use the Play-Doh cutter shapes if you have to make all sorts of forms and paint them and maybe make a salt dough zoo or whatever it is that you like. So salt dough is a great alternative. It can air dry. Thinner pieces air dry in 1 or 2 days. but you can always bake it at 200 degrees. And this is a great sensorial, hands-on, tactile activity that I think all the children in the class will enjoy. So start with the beads maybe and see what develops from there. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you have fun with your salt dough creations, just like I did. Thanks, guys. Bye.